Hey everyone, it's Ellis, and this video is going to be recapping and then adding some more insight onto things that are going on right now and catching up on something that is happening, which is a pretty historic moment in that for the first time ever in the history of all of esports, players are striking and not playing, and they are going against a franchised league. And this is historic. It's never been done before. This is something to the scale has never happened. And we are all just watching it unfold before our eyes, and we're all going to just sit here and watch the outcome. And what is happening is the LCS players are going against Riot in North America surrounding the LCS summer split. And right now, we're going to just look at the timeline of events for a lot of people that don't know what has all happened. So let's start at the very beginning. So on May 7th, LCS Eevee ended up tweeting out sources. All LCS teams have reportedly voted against making NACL mandatory for 2024. However, they are pushing for the rule to be dropped starting with the summer split. Riot is expected to announce their decision on Monday regarding whether teams will be required to have an NACL team. So this is what ended up coming out on May 7th. This was the first news that something like this was going to happen. Now, we heard murmurs of this last year, but nothing ended up coming to fruition, if people recall. And a lot of people scoffed at the idea that something like this would happen, that owners wouldn't do something like this because there was a lot of talk that why would they, right? And on Travis Gafford on Hotline League yesterday ended up showing he actually had some video footage from way back in the day when franchising was originally happening and the birth of Academy and all this other stuff. Riot talking about supporting it and supporting the players and all this other great things and, you know, great things about franchising and all this other stuff and the org owners and development and yada, yada, yada. And the follow-up to this ends up happening here on May 13th. So we go immediately to this. LCS comes out and says, our commitment to the NACL, I'll read now at this link. So we end up opening the link and we will read it together. Our commitment to the NACL. We remain committed to evolving the NA talent development pipeline. LCS teams recently removed the mandate to field a team for the North American Challenger League, NACL, beginning with summer 2023 in an effort to unlock more operational and financial flexibility. After reviewing the proposal, we've agreed to their request in this case to support the continued long-term success of the teams and professional esports ecosystem in North America. We remain committed to evolving any talent development pipeline. We've been regularly taking steps to open opportunities for the thriving grassroots community through Proving Ground Circuit in 2021 and the introduction of NACL provisional teams and the NACL promotional tournament this year. Our work here isn't done and we will continue throughout the season and beyond. There's been a lot of speculation, so we want to clarify three things. The NACL will be operational for summer 2023 and beyond. As we move into 2023, we want to make adjustments to the NACL format to ensure we provide a competitive system for teams. We're implementing a true promotion relegation system for NACL where all NACL teams are eligible for relegation. We're making the NACL more geographically accessible by utilizing the Chicago server for competition. We're making a commitment for long-term sustainability. This summer we'll be immediately implement mechanisms like Twitch subscription and team partner broadcast integration mirroring the LCS. We're expanding the competitive opportunities for the NA developmental system by delivering cross-region competition for the Americas as early as 2024. Based on the success of other regional development tournaments and leagues in the EMEA and APAC, we're excited to explore the cross-regional competition can look like in the America region, which includes the North America, Latin America, and Brazil. We'll share more about this initiative as we lock in more details. The LCS import rules are not changing. So this ended up coming out because of the rumor that ended up surfacing, and you guys might know about that because several people inside of the scene ended up talking about it, myself included. And so we talk about it here as they respond to it. While we may redesign our developmental systems or evolve the path to pro in the future, there are no changes in the works around the current import policies for the LCS. The NACL will look a bit different this summer, and we'll share a more detailed overview of the format, teams, and schedules as soon as possible. We'll work with LCS teams to ensure that they have strong avenues to scout players, even if they are not involved in the NA developmental ecosystem directly. We'll continue to take steps to evolve our evolve our developmental ecosystem and to ensure the systems and structures in place support the aspirations of potential pro players by helping them grow, building their brands, sharing stories, creating opportunities to be scouted, and finding a path to the next level of play. So the follow-up to this is the LCS Players Association then puts out a tweet. This is also happening on May 13th. So Riot's lack of commitment to the NACL. 3 weeks ago, Riot claimed to be building the future of sports globally. Today, Riot abandoned the future in North America. While the statement today was framed as the commitment to the NACL, the reality is that as many 70 players, coaches, and managers will lose their jobs overnight. The unprecedented decision to destroy the NACL less than a month before the start of the 2023 NACL summer split with no plan and no warning is a stain on their leadership. Riot's decision to eliminate the NACL mandate was in direct contradiction of the statements made to the PA by Riot leadership throughout the talks earlier this year regarding future NACL changes. Riot Esports leadership gave the LSPA assurances that no changes would be made in 2023 as recently as 1 week ago. The LSPA is calling on all members of the LCS and NACL community, players, coaches, streamers, and fans to stand up in unison and demand for Riot to reverse this decision in order to protect the future of the LCS. We must protect the NACL today to ensure that any future for the LCS tomorrow. To put the magnitude of this decision in context, over 50% of the current LCS pros came up through the NACL/Academy system. The promotion of homegrown talent fuels financial savings for teams and ignites fans around the next generation of LCS talent, and the impact of this decision on the league's future cannot be overstated. Today's decision is a hollow attempt to appease the team's owners' demands for increased financial support. Claims that the NACL is in any way responsible for teams' financial instability are false. The average annual salary cost of an entire NACL roster represents less than 17% of average LCS organizations' league-based salary costs in a year. Teams continue to spend elsewhere in ways that far exceed the impact of the NACL of their bottom line. Europe has a thriving ERL system, and the LCK and LPL maintain robust challenger rosters and leagues. By comparison, North America now has a developmental product with no viewership, no institutional support, no paying jobs, and no future. So a couple of things here that we're going to pause on is the LSPA does make a statement that it takes less than 17% on average of an LCS organization's league-based salary costs in a year. Now, one of the things that we're going to be able to come back to is, fortunately, thanks to the transparency of Disguised Toast, we now have a public figure to go off of that does not require any of the LCS teams to open up their financial books and show the spending of their academy teams, where the projected numbers for academy funding and everything was anywhere between $400,000 to $700,000 on the high end. That was on the high end. It was supposed to be $700,000. That was the projected yearly operational costs of an academy team. And on the, the average / lower end, it was supposed to be about $400,000 or actually less. And when you end up realizing that LSPA reveals how much Riot gives the LCS teams in a future tweet, which they end up revealing, I believe in one of these tweets, they reveal it. Scuffed? It's not scuffed. It's not scuffed. I will get the tweet in which, there it is. Not scuffed. Not scuffed. Not scuffed. Boom. So, it was that tweet, and I'm just totally blind. I had it open actually the whole time. Not scuffed. Not edited, by the way. One take, based. Okay, so Riot gave each team $3 million this year to operate in LCS plus NACL, but only 3 could afford 15 to 20% of that to promote the future of NACL. So this is where they get the number. So you get the $3 million, and then LSPA is suggesting that, that LCS teams are spending 17% on average, right, of the LCS organization's league-based salary costs in a year. Okay, so Europe, they talk about Europe here, and then you move on. They say, Riot failed today to provide any plan to ensure the NACL remains a viable talent pipeline for NA. The LSPA does not have a plan, and we shared it with Riot months ago. The PA plan is designed to facilitate a shift towards a future where LCS teams will not be required to field NACL rosters. Throughout the regular meeting between Riot and the PA, both parties acknowledged the NACL would not be viable today without Riot requiring LCS partner organizations to have an NACL roster. The LSPA proposal for 2024: allow teams to pay NACL players based on local wage laws instead of California. So this is their list of demands. So allow NACL teams to pay NACL players based on local wage laws instead of California labor minimums. Allow teams to partner with affiliate organizations to operate their NACL rosters and share costs. Introduce a robust in-game item program for LCS teams that mirror their generous revenue sharing program in Valorant. Introduce meaningful incentives in promotion/relegation and revenue sharing for outside organizations to invest in an NACL roster. The LCSEevee believes these proposals will reduce the costs associated with NACL roster by as much to 50% and provide much-needed incentives to make the LCS and NACL viable in the short and long term. The LSPA proposals provide a tangible bridge between today and a future where a mandate may not be necessary. Players, fans, and anyone who care about the league, esports, and LCS, please join us in making your voices heard and publicly calling for Riot to reverse the short-sighted mistake and working collaboratively with the LCPA to protect the future of the LCS. There is still time to get this right. So the follow-up to this is that Eevee ends up reporting on May 18th, and the reveal is that only 3 teams will keep their NACL roster. Those 3 teams are Team Liquid, Evil Geniuses, and FlyQuest, with, I believe, Team Liquid keeping their team throughout the remainder of this year, I believe. And that is what is going on currently. So that was May 18th is what ended up happening. So the follow-up to this is the breaking news that ended up coming out on May 24th, just a week ago. The NALSPA has asked LCS players to vote on Sunday on a walkout in protest of changes to the NACL. If we have 26 out of the 50 of the LCS players willing to do something, I can tell you right now, the league's not running, Philip Aram said. So what happens here is now they realize that Riot's just not responding to things, and what's going on is they're going to have a strike, and they are looking for 26 out of the 50 players in order to strike so that they can actually viably do it. So in response to this, the LSPA ends up quote retweeting and end up putting out the statement. Our asks of Riot: institute Valorant-style promotion and relegation between the LCS and NACL. Riot commit to a revenue pool for player salaries of $300K per NACL team per year. Allow LCS orgs to partner with affiliates for cost sharing. Riot guarantees LCS minimum contracts for the following year for the 5 players who win the LCS Summer Finals each year. Institute 3/5 roster continuity rule to provide players on a released NACL roster's first priority in maintaining their slots in the upcoming NACL season if a majority continue to compete together. Okay. Follow-up to this ends up coming on May 30th, so 6 days after. LCS remains on schedule. Teams have been granted permission to sign additional players post-roster lock. Meanwhile, the NALCSPA is working to mitigate the signings. LCS orgs are obligated to play due to a contract with Riot. The contract with Riot, which Eevee is referring to here, is that this is in the rulebook. Team forfeiting a game without prior consent from league is a $50,000 fine. On the second offense, it's an indefinite suspension and potential expulsion from the league. Additional offenses: indefinite suspension and potential expulsion from the league. Limitation period 48 months, which is absolutely insane. So that is what is going on right now. Now, what no one has actually talked about here, and I'm actually going to pull Eevee into a call in just a bit, is some of the stuff that has not been reported on anywhere here yet, which is, so there are some things which have been reported on, which is the rank restrictions have been lifted, so you can now field anyone from any rank to now play in LCS. So Riot is now fine with anyone from any rank playing in LCS. And in addition to that, anyone from anywhere in the world can now play in LCS. So this was where they were going. Now, Wooloo ended up having this thread, which was a recap on what was going on. This also ended up coming out today. LCS teams requested Riot to eliminate the requirement fielding NACL teams. Riot agreed to this request, citing the aim for achieving greater operational and financial flexibility. The LCS Player Association, LSPA, has highlighted that approximately 70 jobs may be lost as a result of this decision. Out of the 10 LCS teams, only FlyQuest, Evil Geniuses, and Team Liquid have chosen to maintain their roster in the NACL, as the remaining 7 teams have decided to withdraw. In response to the changes made to the NACL, the LSPA has called for a vote to stage a walkout as a form of protest. Last night, an overwhelming majority of the LCS players voted in favor of the walkout. They will therefore not be playing in the LCS and can't be forced to do so. And just for clarity's sake, the overwhelming majority, it truly was really overwhelming. And I do think if the number ever does actually come out, the only way the dissent votes even make sense is literally if the dissenters didn't understand what was going on. That's the only way to make sense of it. That is how overwhelming the vote was, from everything that I have heard. They will therefore not be playing in the LCS and can't be forced to do so. It has been reported that the LCS teams will be obliged to field an LCS roster due to an agreement with Riot that mandates them to have competitive rosters. Consequently, they will need to sign new players to fulfill this requirement. However, the LCSPA will attempt to mitigate those signings. These are referred to as the scab players. Now, what has ended up happening is that a lot of players have been contacted from all over North America, not even just North America, but boot campers in other regions, current American players, Canadians, etc., that are in Europe, and current ones that are even here in Korea right now, boot camping in Korea, have been asked to play. And they've obviously been contacted, and they have been stopped as well from, going forth with it, because everyone is just trying to halt and lock this from progressing. So, to give more context, 50% of the current LCS players have been through the NACL. The economical situation of the LCS teams is very difficult, as has been reported that many are trying to sell their spot. I also know from sources that salaries have been drastically reduced in the LCS this year. Sources also say that the cost to run an LCL team is around $1 million per year. However, the LSPA alternative plan has also addressed those issues. Additionally, each LCS team has been given $3 million by Riot in order to help them out for the LCS and NACL this year. From now on, it looks like we might see the LCS start with teams fielding rosters of newly acquired players. Riot already announced their roster of the NACL summer split, including the newcomers of Disguised Toast. In Europe, this obligation of having academy teams has already been removed in 2021. Is North America prepared for comparable change, considering that their path to pro has not been as successful as that of the ERLs? Credit here to LCS Eevee and Leader Grev for the reports, and then Wooloo says that his DMs are open. So now, a couple of hours ago, this is 5 hours ago, Travis Gafford ended up tweeting this out, as well as a couple of other people. I mentioned on Hotline League in an earlier stream that I would be at the Riot to interview Golden Guardians, Cloud9, and a few other players for Riot's Asset Day. We were supposed to be check-in at 11 a.m., and then I received an email moments ago at 10:11 a.m. that Asset Day is canceled. And then Tom Searfrost, Optimus Tom, former Rider, I think former Rider, right? X-Riot, yeah, okay. This was a makeup asset day, and the original took place before the walkout. And then Travis says players had nothing to do with it. Riot canceled, and the only kind of makeup day, as both C9 and Golden Guardians plus a few other players weren't there, so close to a quarter of the league. I wonder why Riot would cancel the day they scheduled and hired contract workers for, while players are the ones refusing to play. So there is a couple of things so that we can end up talking about. There is also the Tyler 1 clip.
Okay, so my whole thing with this is, I've been saying for years, every single player in Academy, as soon as they feel like they've made it. Academy players feel like they've made it. A lot of them stop playing solo queue. They've already played LCS and dropped to Academy. It's like a comfortable home, and they get an Academy and they're comfortable, and they're just paycheck thieves. They just get money for free, like $70K a year for free for doing the bare minimum of anything, right? There's no brand. They're not making the orgs they're in stronger. They're not popular. There's nothing. They're not doing anything. So and it's like somebody said it's like 75 per player is like 600,000 a year. Bro, that's just bleeding. There's no org is keeping that, making that money back. I'd say out of the 600,000 whatever that it was for an Academy team. Fuck I'm just gonna dodge. Anyway, what was I saying? So let's say an Academy team, they have to pay them like 600 salary grand. I don't know if that includes housing or whatever. Bro, I would argue that out of that $600,000 that per year an LCS team is getting from that, probably what, less than $50,000 worth of revenue, if anything. So it's just a bleed. There's bleeding. Now you could say, well, it's to develop talent. Bro, those Academy players are not leaving Academy. 90% of Academy, they will never, ever, 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 ever see LCS. Never. They know that. The pros know that. The coaches know that. Everybody knows that. They're not going to ever touch the LCS. Everybody knows it. So it's like a comfortable place for them to like slowly eat paychecks for like nothing. Sure, they maybe scrim the LCS team. Sure, they maybe do this, do that, but whatever. Okay? And it's been like this way for years, by the way. Years. So you see these guys in solo queue, then you stop seeing them. As soon as so-and-so gets signed to Academy, boom, you stop seeing them ever. The biggest one was like Johnson was huge. Like, he was a solo queue grinder, blah, blah, blah. He got him Academy. He had a brief. Wait, is Johnson is he still starting for a team? I don't know. He's in LCS, but you don't see this kid at all. Whatever, bro. It is what it is, right? Then we go to the product. Nobody watches that shit. Nobody cares. It's just filled up with the old NA pros that has dropped down so they can comfortably make money as they're... By the way, this is all like friendships, by the way. They all just comfortably make money in Academy when they're not good enough to play in the LCS anymore for God knows how long. Don't give me this, oh, it's to nurture NA talent. Nobody, it's on both the teams and the players. Nobody is brought up from Academy. I'm sorry, bro. It's so fucking rare. They're just imported or it's the same old players recycled. It's so hard to get brand new players. No, man. So if you're not taking players from Academy anyway, you might as well just stop paying for it. So I feel like people are striking and people are upset. Bro, what was it even doing anyway? Like I said, there's people crying about it. Well, no NA talent. Bro, if we're being honest, there's not any NA, there hasn't been NA talent in years anyway. Why are we just now mad about it? Because, oh, there's no NA talent, so now finally, we're just going to stop bleeding money. We don't have any NA talent anyway, and we're just going to cancel the teams. But people are like, well, no, we need the teams to have NA talent. There is no NA talent. Nobody was getting promoted anyway. So what they need is they need the teams, so when their time in the LCS is done, they have a nice little safety blanket. Or if they have a bad split, instead of just getting kicked, they just go to Academy and still low-key make money. It doesn't do anything. No one even watched NALCL. Well, okay, yes. So it was a dead nobody ever watched it anyway. But also, I'm arguing it didn't do anything regardless. So yes, nobody watched, but none of the players were getting brought up anyway. So it doesn't matter. So if nobody watched, but a considerable amount of players were promoted to LCS, then sure. But nobody watched, and 95% of the players didn't see any LCS. I don't know, bro. Why the fuck was it around for so long? I don't know. It shouldn't have been. The Orgs did it to themselves, though. I'm not saying that's not the truth. There's for sure players that should have got signed from Academy that never seen LCS. For sure. I'm not saying that's not the case. Yes, there's no passion. NA pros have no passion. Bro, I've been saying it. They get their fucking spot. Swap me, you piece of shit. Who's one of the players not promoting LCS? Again, that's the Orgs and the coaching positions. Which it's not like all the coaches and all the faculty and the staff of the team is not NA. There's some not NA, but they should have also tried. The thing about that is, players who do try and don't fucking pop off at the beginning are instantly dropped back down to Academy. So like that's a good spot for them. But they're never brought. It's gonna be Kane top, but they're never brought back up. Even though it's a waste of time based on a single record. Yeah, true. And then on top of all this shit, we suck. And again, I mean they suck. LCS NA sucks. So it's like, dude, we just need to like pick our hill to die on. Do we want to? So we're already gonna suck, right? Do we want to pretend that we care, or do we want to embrace sucking and just become like full for fun content? Seriously, Academy's all ex-LCS washed up players. Not all of it, but majority. Yes, a lot of it. Yes, bro. Yes. And players who will never be given a shot. So what is the point of having an Academy team in the first place? There is none. There is no point. So they said, fuck it, got rid of them, saved themselves millions over the years. Fudge, Licorice, IMT, Immortals lineup, Lucio, Tenacity, Jojo, Danny, all from Academy. How did like all but like 6 of those players do, or all but like 3 of those players do, right? And when did they get into the league and start, bro? That's like one split, and they've both bounced around. They've almost all bounced around from Academy to LCS to Academy to LCS. Like, okay.
So that's obviously Tyler's clip, and Tyler raises a lot of very, very good points. And so now, I mean, he does legitimately raise a lot of very good points, and we can talk about a lot of those points, right? Which is the public outcry that people had about Academy over the last couple of years, right? Academy's viewership. People talked about Academy's viewership and how Academy had a separate channel on Twitch. Academy had less than 10,000 viewers on Twitch. No one would stream Academy. No one cared about Academy. You go on to the players' Twitters and they don't tweet. And now Elon Musk did the thing where now you can see the amount of views that a tweet gets. So you can actually even see the amount of people or the amount of eyes that like a tweet maybe got seen by. And you can see that like these people are not engaging with anyone. They're not doing anything. And I think this is what Tyler is like raising the concern for, which is there's this exorbitant amount of money being pumped into something and you're getting no return in any way. You're not getting content return. You're not getting any sort of financial return. You're not getting branding return. And no players are actually being promoted from Academy. And the reality is that no one watches LCS Academy. No one also watches the players' streams. And the other thing that is very strange about this is everyone is on Twitter right now. Everyone's up in arms on Reddit the same way that they were up in arms on Reddit over so many other things going on with LCS over the years, or even Academy over, over the last couple of years, and nothing changed. And it really is feeling like people just want to hate on Riot and want to hate on LCS. That's what it's slowly like becoming in a way, because yes, this is monumental and it's absolutely a historic moment and something is going to happen. But this is a battle, it's not a war. Even if something ends up happening where the LCS Players Association ends up winning, and or like winning in the sense that, some demands are met, or negotiations end up going well and something happens. Esports is a very interesting place in that it operates in shadows. I mean, that's just how it is. Things will always come back around in some way, shape, or form. And one of the things when I pull Eevee onto this, sponsors are all watching what is going on. This league looks like a problematic teenager now. This league looks like it is dysfunctional. Investors are probably looking at this like it is a disaster. The sponsors were already pulling out this year. Jacob Wolf already tweeted out, I can't remember if it was this year or it was last year, that venture capitalist, fundraising, not only just this year, but last year as well, was already getting really, really hard to do, and teams were failing to do it. The salary cuts started last year, and then they doubled down again this year. We are approaching an esports winter, and the players, when they're doing this strike and they're fighting for an ACL to end up coming back, even if they get an ACL back, there is ramifications. There are consequences to everything that is happening right now that has nothing to do with Riot Games and has nothing to do with them. Sponsors and investors and all these other people are going to look at these series of events, and what are they going to think about everything that's actually happening? Because sponsors and investors, they are not caught up in the appeal to emotion and the emotions surrounding the public outcry about things. I think that they're going to actually look at the things that Tyler is saying. What is the viewership of NA Academy? What are the impressions? What are the views on YouTube videos for these players? What are the analytics on all of these types of things? And I think from a pure business perspective, the same way that Riot and the team owners were saying, they would look at it the same way and be like, well, I think it makes sense to do this. But now, when you have everything that's going on right now, and it looks as dysfunctional as it is, it's going to make things, I think, even more worse because of the way that esports operates. And I spoke about this personally on my stream. Now, I think the situation is very, very unfortunate. But I also think that the situation that all of esports is in right now is also super fortunate in many ways. And I think that we could talk about many, many, many different types of things. So we talk about ERLs, and we talk about LPL's academy system and LCK's academy system, and we talk about all these other things. What people won't talk about is that the secondary teams or third teams, etc., in a lot of other countries, they do not even cost 10% of what an LCS academy team is going to cost you. They will not need that much operation, and there is much more return because there's proven return because it keeps happening, right? The players actually do keep promoting up into those leagues, and they keep moving up, and there is brand value, and those players sometimes actually are streamers that do have, like, some level of following. Typically this happens in like China or in some of the PCS regions. This ends up happening, etc., where like players end up turning into, or like streamers end up turning into players or something, or players that have a very good reputation from solo queue end up turning into players, etc., right? So in those areas, it is actually working. But it's very bizarre to me, the amount of conversations that I've had with people that are very ignorant to the financial aspects of all the other regions, and then they're talking about LCS. And I think what Tyler is saying is, unfortunately, if you remove all of the emotions from the equation, what he's saying is pretty apt, because it is what's going on. Now, I do think that there is a lot of solutions that could have made it not the case. I think the Disguised Toasts tweet is very damning, and that it actually shows how ridiculously expensive an academy team is to actually maintain and to upkeep. I think that that's very scary. I do not want LCS to actually go under. I do not want LCS to falter, but I do think that there's a lot of things that are not going super well for LCS. I do think that one of the things that I'm very fearful for all of the players right now is what comes after this strike, regardless of the end of the battle. So let's say the peace treaty gets signed. What eventually happens? What is the Cold War that follows this? What happens behind the scenes following this? It might not happen 3 months from now, might not happen 6 months from now. Something is going to happen, because that's just how this industry works, and that is what ends up going on. And this is what I was alluding to a couple of weeks ago when I said that a lot of the players are very new to all of this. And I think that while obviously all of their intentions are there and good, and I think a lot of people are very proud of them for unifying and standing together in the manner that they are, and obviously a lot of people are rallying behind them on social medias and other places, etc. What is it going to do ultimately at the end of the day? Because right now we are at the 11th hour. LCS is supposed to start tomorrow, but I'm not sure if it's actually going to. Now, I'm going to turn this into some of the darker aspects of things that are actually going on as I get Eevee on the call to talk about some of the things that are happening. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
I can.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so I just got done recapping pretty much everything, and I segued it into saying that I would talk about with you some of the stuff that is not yet public, as we are at the 11th hour. So I believe that we are 24 hours out from what should be the roster lock, the standard roster lock, right? We're like approaching.
Yeah.
We're like approaching like almost the normal 24-hour roster lock period. Okay. And some of the stuff that is not currently public is that there is criminal activity, quite literally, that is going on. And I mean, you know about it. And some of the stuff that I'm only going to feel comfortable like talking about is stuff that you've also corroborated and been able to talk about, stuff that has already gotten to me. Some of the stuff that's happened with me personally is that I was reached out to over the last couple of days by people that were connected to the Korean players, asking, you know, what was going on, and to make sense of everything that was happening. Because it seems like everything is just a complete chaos storm, right, in North America.
Yeah.
So as we're at the 11th hour, we can just talk about the really messed up thing. And this isn't the first time that stuff like this has happened, because I have already talked about really other messed up stories in the past, like player locked in the room, forced to sign an NDA. But now we can talk about the blackmail and threats that is going on right now with players.
Yeah, so basically, sources have told me at least that a lot of players have been threatened and pressured to not participate on like LCS teams when they're being asked to play. Yeah.
Right. That, I mean, that's yeah. It's kind of insane when it's getting to this point where players are like actual blackmail over certain things are being brought up and threatened to be leveraged against the player in order to get them to play. I think that's really problematic. And then the other thing, which I guess I will just talk about this because it's not directly affiliated with LCS and it's not directly affiliated. Sorry. not directly affiliated with Riot, but the green card issue, which is going on right now, which is the threat to remove a green card process.
Yeah, basically, if they don't play, the
Yes.
teams will stop working on the green cards for
Yes.
the green card players.
Yes. Which is, I can't even... I can't even... So, for people that are unaware, typically the green card process takes, I believe, 2 years. I believe it takes 2 to 2.5 years. It's obviously a very important thing for the teams. They want to do it business-wise because it makes the player a resident in North America. So for their own benefit, it's very important to them. For certain players, it's also really big because, one, lets them dodge military, and then two, living in the United States is seen as, like, very nice, right? So,
yeah.
This has nothing to do with Riot, has nothing to do with League of Legends, and now using that is, I just, all I'm gonna say is that, you know, I don't know. I once, you know, all I'm gonna say is I don't have my South Korean visa, you know, so I won't, I'm not surprised.
It is a situation.
Yeah, it is a bit of a situation. Yeah, I'm not a... I mean, I don't have my permanent residence yet. I will get it next year. Well, I'll get it at the end of this year, but obviously I should have already had it, but clearly I don't. But stuff like this is going on right now. And to my knowledge, there's also a meeting that is supposed to happen today. I believe it's actually concluding right now.
It's finishing up right now.
Yeah, it's finishing up right now. So I think that by the time this video is actually up on YouTube, the meeting will have finished. So I don't know what that video will end up having, but this is the recap up until this point. And I don't know, is there any other news that has happened in the 30, 40 minutes since I last talked to you?
No, not as I know of.
Okay.
I think the meeting is still ongoing, and I think LSPA is probably going to put out some kind of statement about it. If Riot doesn't, so yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I just feel like, as I talked about a moment prior to calling you, sponsors and investors must just be looking at all of this, and I think that is the big picture, which the players aren't seeing. No matter the outcome of what goes on with Riot.
Well, yeah, there's a chance sponsor might just pull out after seeing all of this.
Right, well, they already were pulling out, right? At the start of the year. How many teams lost big sponsors?
Yeah, and now it might be faster, because depending on how LCS will look week 1. Because
I mean, or you know what? Or I'm just totally wrong. And somehow there is just some absolutely angelic like sponsors and investors that are just totally inspired by the passion and everything of like this historic moment. You know what I mean? Like that type of like investment or like sponsorship.
But they're not sponsors of the players, so I don't think they're sponsor of the orgs who's doing this quote unquote against the players.
Yeah, that would be right. That would right. Yeah, that would be a little that'd be a little different. Okay. So yeah, I think that pretty much recaps everything.
Yeah.
Do you random question? So I was talking about some of the Chinese and Korean academy leagues. Are you familiar with what the average ERL salaries are?
I have not looked into it, but I can probably find out. But it's probably like lower than NACL salary, I think.
Okay, Korea is very, very low. Korea is very low.
Yeah. I've heard about Korea and China being like
disgusting. Like you can't even believe how low it is. Yes, it is so low. So that's why I'm so interested in ERL, like what the number is, because I always hear different numbers.
I think because of where LCS is located in is LA. I think it's lower than LCS.
Okay.
Unless it's like one of those reckless contracts, which
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think immediate remedies to some of the problems that LCS and other things are facing is LCS to move to a different state, because this allows players and orgs to operate on less money.
But they're never gonna do that.
But it doesn't make sense to not do it.
I think the logic is it's too late because all the teams and orgs have like already built their facilities and stuff around LA and around LCS already. So
build a new facility. I know it sounds crazy, but literally, yeah.
Yeah, they can use the academy money.
Yeah, I mean something like actually just do. Just do. I don't know. Like, I feel like you know that what is that quote? Like the best time to plant a tree was what is it? Like yesterday, the second best time is now, or something like that. You know what I mean? Like the longer you wait, the worse it just gets.
The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You just move.
I think if they would do this, they would have to do like another vote, like how they did with the NACL changes.
Right.
And I don't know. I think Riot really wants it to be in LA because LA is like where all the like influencers and stuff are.
Right,
So, yeah.
right. Okay. One of the things that I did not get to talk about is one of the aspects in which teams were having discussions on if the fine was actually going to be less than the amount that they would have to have paid flights and accommodations for people who have flown into LCS, in addition to like paying them. But then Riot did the thing where they lifted the rank restriction in addition to the location restriction.
Yeah, it's you can be unranked and you can play from basically anywhere.
Yep.
Yeah. But I mean, the fine for not playing, according to rulebook, is 50k.
Yes.
So maybe that might. Riot have said if they don't feel the roster, it's going to be worse than that, apparently. So.
Right.
Because it's the walkout and Riot doesn't want to look bad.
Yep. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining for this part of the video. And yeah, if I end up doing a stream about this, I'd love to have you on. I might do a stream about this. Yeah.
I'm awake.
Because I think one of the things that like people don't know about, because I think a lot of people when they're hearing me talk about what's going on, right? They think that I'm probably just very doom about NA Academy and stuff, or like prospects.
It's completely fucked.
It is. But one of the things that I've been very transparent and open about is the amount of like boot campers that like come through my house over the years, right? That like live with, like I have some living with me right now, and I have several coming out to live with me very soon. Like Griffin is coming soon. Tenacity is coming. I'm getting an entire new apartment for boot campers, because what's happening right now is all boot campers that come to Korea, they pay exorbitant amounts of money to try to like live here because of like agency fees. They don't know what they're doing. They have to like rent PCs and all this other stuff. So I'm gonna just make like a landing spot for like a lot of them and stuff. And one of the things I'm trying to talk about with Dominate is making something for like aspiring like actual NA talent that wanted like genuinely hardcore bootcamp in Korea and like try to do stuff like that with like sort of like StarCraft-esque. But I don't know. I just wanted to like end this part of the video with that, because I think the idea that like just because I'm being very like cynical about many of the things going on here, the idea that I don't support NA talent or like stuff like that, when really I think I'm detached from a lot of the emotional aspect of some of the things going on.
I mean, I think anything that lets a player like show off and like go to Korea and show that they can hit like challengers really good, because a lot of org like value like high challenger in Korea.
Right. So yeah, we'll see. I think like stuff Disguised Toast is doing is fantastic. I hope like Mr. Beast, the LCS stuff, I hope that stuff still ends up going on. I hope that more like, I don't know. I hope for stuff like this because I do not want to see the LCS actually go under. Yeah. Okay, that is it for the video. Thank you so much. Okay, so as the other video literally finished recording, and we're getting ready to upload it onto YouTube. It was a total recap. This now comes in at the final update. So this is at the end of the timeline. So this part is actually being recorded after the conversation with Eevee. However, it's going to be placed before the conversation with Eevee in post-edit. So the conversation with Eevee takes place before this update actually comes out, just for clarity's sake. Okay. So let's read this together. We react to it together in real time. An update of the 2023 LCS summer season. There's been a lot of discussion over the past few days about the North American Challenger League NACL and the LCS player walkout. I know many of you have questions about where Riot stands, so I'd like to share some of the thoughts as well as the scheduling decision we've made with the goal of getting to a positive outcome. First and foremost, we support the players. We also support teams, and we believe more than ever in the LCS. The LCS has always been a flagship league for LoL esports, and we care deeply about it. We know that everyone in the ecosystem, from the players to the teams to Riot, everyone behind the scenes making each week possible, and so many others, we all share the same goals for the LCS. We need LCS that is thriving to watch and showcase the highest levels of League of Legends play. We need a league that represents the pinnacle of North American competition, one that serves as an aspirational goal for competitive players who want to build a career for playing League of Legends with a clear path to the LCS. We need an esports league that will one day bring the Summoners Cup home to North America, and we need a sustainable, economically viable, predictable league that supports a thriving ecosystem around it, and the players, teams, analysts, coaches, support staff, casters, broadcast crews, and more. There's been a lot of talk about the current state of esports, including esports' long-term future. Over the last few months, we've been more focused than ever on meeting the team's needs for economic sustainability. But we also know that the sustainability can't come at the expense of having a robust, thriving developmental pipeline to bring fresh, homegrown new blood into the league. We're excited by what we see in the amateur and collegiate scene, and we know to do more to nurture those communities and bring the gap between them and professional scene. We also believe in the Tier 2 developmental system. We know that our past efforts with the LCS Academy scene haven't produced consistent results in terms of promotion to LCS. We believe that the Tier 2 can be a viable, exciting league in its own right, and the next great world-class players will start their journey here. Riot has successfully architected a Tier 2 ecosystem in other major regions, Europe, China, and Korea, and we want to do the same for North America. It will take some shifts and trade-offs to get there, so to help the North American scene through this transition, we've decided to give our NACL partner Rallycry an additional $300,000 in order to jumpstart the 2023 NACL season next week. This funding is in addition to the revenue share to NACL teams we announced last week. We're going to come back to this. Transitioning from the ineffective academy system to the new NACL model will be helped by this funding. We're also working with LCS and NACL teams, along with the LCSPA, to increase upward mobility toward opportunities for the players in the LCS, which is the ultimate goal for the Tier 2 developmental league. To make sure we live up to the quality we promised to our fans, we're delaying the LCS season for 2 weeks. All that said, a top priority for us is always the fans. While last week we immediately put in place contingency plans to bring the LCS on Thursday, we ultimately decided that it would not hold true to our values that Riot Esports offers to our players and fans for showcase the best competitive League of Legends. Nothing but putting the best players in North America on stage at Riot Games Arena is acceptable. So we informed LSPA leadership today that we will delay the LCS season for the next 2 weeks. Hopefully this 2-week window will give us time for productive dialogue between the LSPA teams and the league, and the resume LCS competition this summer. The LCS will not be penalizing the teams for not fielding their rosters during this 2-week period to allow everyone space to focus on constructive dialogue. We are doing our best to ensure LCS employees, contractors, and others supporting the LCS are not negatively impacted by the delay. Delaying beyond the 2-week window would make it nearly impossible to run a legitimate competition, and in that case, we would be prepared to cancel the entire LCS summer season. Carrying this forward, if the LCS summer season is canceled, this would also eliminate the LCS teams qualifying for the 2023 Worlds. I want to be clear, this is not an outcome we'd want, but it's unfortunately the reality of ensuring we run a fair, competitive global system. Okay, so I want to come back to this as well. This is really weird terminology where the person literally writes, I feel like this is no longer Riot. This is like, okay. So there's a couple of things going on here when I read this. When I read the so immediate pause. This whole thing must have been written before the meeting that was just ongoing, because this is way too large. Like, this is way too large. Whatever amount of people that had to see this, whoever had to review this, whatever, this was way too large. This was already written, which means that whatever they decided going into this meeting today, this was already drafted, and this was ready to just get sent out, which means that the meeting that went into today already had, like, you know, predetermined ideas. Delaying beyond the 2-week window, etc. I want to be clear, this is not an outcome we want, but it's unfortunately the reality of ensuring we want to run a fair, competitive global system. The LSPA has made several requests. Here's how we've addressed them. I also want to address the 5 demands from the LSPA, with the responses that we also provided the LSPA today. Institute Valorant-style promotion and relegation between LCS and NACL. Expanded the league in order to implement a Valorant-style visitor slot system would run counter to our existing partnership model with the 10 LCS teams who paid $10 million per slot to compete in the league. It would dilute LCS teams' equity and put considerable downward pressure on the amount of revenue, our league revenue pool that we share with the teams. More teams in the pool would dilute the revenues that we share 50% with our teams under the partnership model. Given the challenging macroeconomic climate, expanding the league is not a good idea at this time. Riot guarantees LCS minimum contracts for the following 5-year players who following year for 5 players who win NACL summer finals. Guaranteed LCS contracts for winners aren't a necessary component of a healthy developmental league. LCS teams are in the best position to decide who should get a shot. We will continue to discuss initiatives to connect LCS to NACL players who have in place with scouting grounds. Players should rise to the LCS based on merit, potential, and team fit rather than artificially forced mechanism. And our focus will be on finding ways to increase the flexibility and mobility of that movement rather than forcing it. True. Institute a 3 out of 5 continuity rule to provide players released on NACL rosters first priority in maintaining their slots in upcoming NACL season if majority continue to compete together. Teams provide greater continuity and structure, therefore we will continue with our policy of slot ownership residing with organizations rather than players. Riot commit to a revenue pool of for player salaries of $300,000 per NACL team per year. This ask is for multiple millions in subsidies for NACL. This simply isn't sustainable. And to be brutally honest, it wouldn't be necessary. We have other tier 2 leagues around the world which thrive on their own, and we believe that NACL can get to that place too. What we will do is help North American scene through this transition. So as I mentioned above, we will be investing in a bridge period by providing a special one-time payment of $300,000 to the NACL's tournament operator, Rallycry, to support NACL teams during the transition to the new structure. Allows LCS orgs to partner with the affiliates for cost sharing. We've seen examples of partnerships between pro teams and the tier 2 teams around the globe results in greater upward mobility, pros and more sustainable tier 2 ecosystems. This is why we already and will continue to allow affiliate relationships to exist between LCS and NACL. For example, Golden Guardians and Area of Effect. Moving forward together, we remain hopeful that the time window now ahead of us will put in a condensed yet competitive LCS summer season and the league's best players and teams. Thanks for taking the time to read this and look for information from me and or other Riot leaders in the day. Okay, so it is written by one per. Okay. So it's okay. So a couple of things that I said that I would immediately come down to. So it says here that Riot has successfully architected a tier 2 ecosystem in other major regions. So one of the things that I would point to is that China and Korea already had its tier 2 ecosystem existing prior to Riot existing in those regions. And what I mean by that is prior to the LCK, there used to be a thing called OGN Champions, or OGN, if you guys remember. And back in the day, LCK teams used to have sister teams. This is effectively academy teams. And sometimes LCK teams would have as much as 3 or 4 sister teams. Still to this day, LCK teams can have as much as 5 teams. There are some LCK teams that actually do have up to 5 teams. Most of them have 3. Most of them have 4, but I think all of them have 3. All of them have 3. Most of them have 4, and then some have 5. The fifth strings are all online. The fourth ones are partially online, but they visit. And then the third ones, some teams, they live on site, and then others are online. For Academy, I believe that they're all on site. And yeah, for Academy, I believe they're all on site, and then obviously main team, they're all on site. And a lot of that was manufactured by the teams. Now, Riot does help But one of the things is that the costs are not nearly comparable to that of NA Academy, which is something that I did already talk about. And obviously, like I talked about with Eevee, or that I will talk about with Eevee in a later conversation that does get very scary, is that the costs are very, very different, and there's a lot of different types of discussions that are not obviously being had here. Now, again, I am very glad that Nas is just literally just laying stuff out the way that it is, and that things just aren't feasible, and it just doesn't make sense. And the same way that the Tyler clip that you guys will also see in this video, and the same way that a lot of other people are just pointing things out sensibly that are removed from emotion, so many things don't make sense financially when you remove the emotional aspect from it. And from a business perspective, it literally just does not make any sense. And I think that is where Riot's hard stance is really starting to come in here. And that is where the impasse is definitely starting. Now, I do think that there are like solutions that can be had, and I do hope that something can actually be had. Now, another thing to note that I found very, very, very interesting is Riot basically says that NA doesn't matter in a way. Kind of. So you guys already know about the MSI fiasco where China could, they made MSI online, right, for LPL. That was like one of the compromises for LPL. And then there was like other incidences with like Worlds and stuff, right? I would almost bet that if something of this caliber was happening for LCK or LPL, this would not be the response. That is just my... Yeah, I don't... It's really weird. It's really weird. Actually, nah, let's just not have this part in here. No, let's just not have this part in here. Let's just not have this part in here. Okay. All right, but that is pretty much it. All right, so that is the newest development. That is the newest development. Now, another thing that I do know is that a lot of orgs are, they are scrambling. They are definitely scrambling with everything that is going on. And you'll hear all of that in the conversation with Eevee.